After the Second World War, the world had witnessed the devastating power of the atomic bomb. The Soviets, once an ally of the United States, soon became its biggest rival. They began heavily defending their airspace and rapidly improved their air defense systems, leaving the United States with little knowledge of what was happening inside the country. American military planners began asking themselves, what if the Soviet Union built its own nuclear weapons? What if they launched a surprise attack like Japan did at Pearl Harbor? There's only one way to find the answers: by spying on them. However, existing American reconnaissance aircraft were increasingly becoming vulnerable to these new defense systems. In 1953, the United States Air Force recommended the development of a new reconnaissance aircraft. To avoid Soviet detection and interception, the plane would have to reach 70,000 feet. A request for proposal was sent to several aircraft manufacturers. After hearing about this, Lockheed submitted their own unsolicited proposal. It was designed by Lockheed's best aeronautical engineer, Clarence Kelly Johnson, responsible for the legendary P-38 and P-80, and was also known for completing projects ahead of schedule. Johnson presented the CL-282, a single-engine, lightweight aircraft derived from an existing fighter jet. The design featured long, slender wings that would generate the lift necessary to reach 70,000 feet. To reduce weight, the fuselage was shortened and the landing gear was eliminated. The plan was that the plane would take off from a special cart and land on its belly. The design was powered by the new General Electric J-73 engine, and the plane didn't feature any weapons. The decision to have a single unproven engine, no weapons, and no landing gear didn't sit well with the United States Air Force. In fact, during the presentation of the CL-282, a high-ranking member of the Air Force Command walked out of the room. The CL-282 failed to meet the Air Force's expectations and was rejected. The design was sent to the CIA, where it found a more receptive audience. The CL-282 was later approved, albeit with a higher performance engine and landing gear. The program would operate under a joint program between the United States Air Force and the CIA. The aircraft was later designated as the U-2 Dragon Lady, which was in keeping with the theme of the aircraft, the U-2 standing for utility instead of the usual R for reconnaissance. The designation also placed the aircraft inconspicuously among routine utility aircraft, further concealing its true purpose. In 1955, Lockheed began building the aircraft in secrecy, which wouldn't be easy to maintain. When Johnson ordered altimeters calibrated to 80,000 feet from a company whose instruments only went up to 45,000 feet, a cover-up story was made up involving test rockets. Initially, U-2 planes were designed and built in a populated area. Realizing they couldn't be tested without exposing the program's secrecy, the planes were taken apart and transported to what would later be known as Area 51. On the 1st of August 1955, the U-2 took its maiden flight. However, getting airborne was a challenge. Its unconventional bicycle landing gear made the aircraft difficult to balance during taxi and takeoff. To solve this, small detachable support wheels known as pogos were fitted beneath each wing. As the aircraft lifted off, the wings rose and the pogos fell away onto the runway. Flying at 70,000 feet revealed great high-altitude performance. But at these high altitudes, pilots were exposed to the plane's narrow margin between its stall speed and maximum safe speed. The two speeds were separated by only a few knots, a dangerous region pilots called the coffin corner, where flying too slow could stall the plane, and flying too fast could cause a loss of control and potentially structural failure. At those extreme altitudes, pilots also had to wear full pressure suits, similar to those worn by astronauts, to protect them if the cockpit lost pressure or in case of an ejection. Although the U-2's long glider-like wings gave it exceptional high-altitude performance, they also made it notoriously difficult to land. To touch down safely, pilots had to deliberately stall the plane just a few feet above the runway. A high-performance chase car driven by another U-2 pilot would race along the runway, calling out its height over the radio to help guide the landing. Additional flight testing refined the aircraft's systems, cameras, and handling characteristics. On the 4th of July 1956, the U-2 conducted its first operational overflights of the Soviet Union. By 1960, the Soviets had significantly strengthened their air defenses. They had introduced the new S-75 Dvina, known to NATO as the SA-2 Guideline, a surface-to-air missile capable of reaching altitudes of up to 80,000 feet, well within the U-2's operating envelope. Despite this growing threat, the CIA prepared the most ambitious U-2 mission yet, Operation Grand Slam. The plan called for a U-2 to cross nearly the entire Soviet Union, flying over 5 high-value intelligence targets before landing in Norway. The mission was expected to last around 9 hours and was originally scheduled for the 29th of April. However, terrible weather conditions forced it to be postponed twice before finally launching on the 1st of May, 1960. The timing proved to be critical. The 1st of May was May Day, a major public holiday in the Soviet Union. With fewer civilian and military aircraft in the skies, Soviet radar operators would have a much easier time tracking the U-2. About 4 hours into the mission near Sverdlovsk at around 70,000 feet, the U-2 was detected. Soviet forces fired several SA-2 missiles, one of which damaged the aircraft and forced the pilot to eject. The Soviets accused the Americans of spying, but the United States denied the allegations, claiming that it was a lost weather plane instead. However, after the Soviets recovered the American pilot along with the U-2's cameras, the US cover-up story quickly fell apart. After the incident, the Americans attempted to make the U-2 more difficult to detect by radar, but these efforts largely failed. In 1962, another U-2 was shot down over Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Despite these incidents, the U-2 continued to conduct operations. Even today, over 70 years later, one of the biggest reasons for the U-2's remarkable longevity is its ability to remain airborne for an extraordinarily long time. Typical missions last between 10 to 12 hours, allowing the aircraft to monitor targets for extended periods. And while satellites have taken many reconnaissance roles, they haven't made the U-2 obsolete. Unlike satellites which follow predictable orbits, the U-2 can be deployed at a short notice and fly unpredictable routes, making it harder for the adversaries to know when they're being watched. The U-2 was originally scheduled to retire in 2012. That date was later pushed back to 2014, and over the following decade, its retirement was repeatedly delayed as no replacement could fully match its capabilities. In 2026, the United States Air Force began withdrawing part of its fleet, with the remaining aircraft currently planned for complete retirement by the end of 2027.